Welcome back to Just One Question. And I'm doing this round now where I'm going back to the people I talked to early in the pandemic and picking my faves. And one of my all-time faves is Tamsen Webster, who is a speaker, of course. Everybody I know is a speaker, but she's an awesome one. And she's the author of an important book, Find Your Red Thread, which if you haven't bought it yet, you should immediately after viewing this podcast, go to Amazon or wherever your bookstore of choice is and get it. And she is a message strategist. So welcome, Tamsen. How are you doing?
I am delighted to be here. It is a lovely way to end a busy day with the joy of speaking with you, Nick.
Oh, wonderful. And well, I hope the day was busy and good, but
it had its high points.
Yeah, excellent. Any day that has its high points, you can say that at the end of it, truthfully, is a good one.
That's right. It definitely had high points. I will take them.
So what are you excited about these days? Bring us up to speed with the Tamsen Webster world.
So it's been interesting. I think that the thing that I'm most excited about is this idea that I'm summing up in the phrase hijacked by heroes. And it's this idea of, as I look in the work that I do with companies, with speakers, with experts, thought leaders, I find that folks keep running up against kind of what sometimes feel like overly simplistic structures for storytelling. And I'm not 100% dissing the hero's journey because it's important and it's useful and it's the quest, it's the monomyth. It's the one that a lot of us know about. But in a way that you and I actually have talked about before, a lot of the problems that companies face and solve, and a lot of the problems and challenges that we, the world, face and solve, are actually bigger than one hero can handle. And so as long as we're trapped in this, everything has to be about good and evil or moral character or down to some kind of hero that's going to save the day or some kind of villain that we can point all our weaponry at and dispatch, we're going to struggle to really articulate for the world not only what it is and why we do it, but I think in also finding the solutions to those problems. So I'm all about figuring out how do we expand our scope of storytelling to be as sophisticated as the problems that we face and the problems that we solve.
Oh my God, I love that. That is so important because you're absolutely right. The problems, especially that the world is facing right now, are so large that thinking about them as white knight moments or heroic opportunities is precisely the wrong and an antiquated way of thinking about them. They're just too big for those kind of things, and they need sustained attention from lots of people, not just one hero riding in, slaying a few things with a sword and then riding out of town again. But that is our model. That's our model for how we solve problems all too often. And it's the Hollywood movie model for how.
Yeah. And it's the pitch deck model too, by the way. It's like, here's this problem, we've got the solution. And I think a lot of times that's why that kind of presentation doesn't always land as effectively as it could. Because it isn't that problems and solutions don't exist. It's that when we oversimplify them and say and kind of represent that this, my idea or our product is going to be the thing that takes care of this. When you're talking about something global, like how is climate change affecting animals and therefore the food on our plates, like it ain't going to come down to one person, and it's not going to come down to one product, and it's not going to come down to one service. It's not going to come down to one idea. It's a collection of those. So how do we find a fairly simple way for people to invite other people in to write these stories that we're telling, these narratives that we're building, without taking it too far, right? Like, how can we simplify things, make them as simple as they need to be and no simpler, to quote apocryphal Einstein.
Right. I'm almost certain Einstein didn't actually say that, but we all wish he did. It's such a great thought.
It is. Yes. I like to think of apocryphal Einstein as just another character in history. It's kind of like apocryphal Lincoln, apocryphal Dao Ching, like apocryphal Lao Tzu. Like, they didn't say these things, but we like to think they did. but it's a good thought.
And any other statement that you like, Jack Kennedy gets.
Yes, exactly. Like apocryphal Jack Kennedy. Apocryphal Einstein has nice alliteration to it, though. I'm like, yeah, I like that. So that's really what's got me excited, is trying to sort that out, right? Because I believe that the way that you approach building messages and building presentations and like allows for that variety of approach, right, with your different story types. I'd like to think that the red thread allows for that variety as well.
Sure.
And so in a lot of ways, I'm really trying to figure out how can, that's really what I'm working on right now is there a way to think, like, to make it easy for people to understand when one type of, when to tell which kind of story, which I know is a lot of work that you've done as well, but kind of in the context of how I think about it with the red thread. Like if we're talking about like, or is there more than one problem? Will a single savior solve it? Like that's one of the questions to ask. Will one solution solve it? And I think basically when you've got that, if you can say no to either question, then you're in a situation where you don't need a savior-based story. You need a systems-based story. And how do we create that and clarify that distinction between kind of savior stories and system stories? And how can I make that easier for people to understand and implement? And that's what I'm excited about.
Awesome. A great insight, one that we desperately need in these times. So from your mouth, Tamsen, to God's ear, as the saying goes. Thank you so much for being on Just One Question. Thank you for that great insight. And everybody run out and find your red thread if you haven't already, because that book will help you in these ways that Tamsen is suggesting to frame great stories that actually solve our problems these days, and not with a single hero. Thank you.
You're welcome.